My name is Marita Viloria, and I come from the Philippines. I am a development practitioner working hand in hand with teams on the ground to help rescue and provide retooling programs to aid in the restoration and healing of prostituted women and children trafficked against their will in my country. I think if I would put it in 3 points, that would be number one, I believe in God's calling in my life, that He has really called me to do this. Number two is because of that call, the way I was raised, my upbringing, I, I was prepared by my upbringing. And number three, I pursued that call in my life. I believe I was called to do this because from childhood, I would be exposed to issues of poverty and reality in my culture, and there's a tug in my heart. There's something that I could not explain. I did not necessarily come from a poor family, or I've not experienced being hungry. I actually come from a very tight family structure where there's so much support system. We're very highly educated. We have food on the table. We have a nice home. We're grateful for that because of the extended family and support system. And that we're not rich, but we're very well provided. And so I would go out of our house and see the poverty, and I would see women in the wet market, for instance, um, selling their vegetables, and they'll be under the heat of the sun or scrolled on the muddy floors. And to me, that is a very difficult job, and nobody wants to buy their vegetables. And if they do, it would be at a very little cost. And they're hungry, they're tired, they're under the sun. And I saw it as I didn't know that that's, you know, that one day I will be working on behalf of women and their rights. So those were human rights issues from my childhood that no one explained to me, but my heart felt it, that I had compassion for these women, and I didn't know what to do. And looking back now, it's about human rights. It's about women wanting, trying to live daily and survive. And also, there was a woman who would come to our house because my uncle was a lawyer, and he she would be bruised all over, and I didn't understand she was a domestic abuse victim. I was very young, and there were no laws at that time, or the laws were not clear, and my uncle would just say, give her counseling, and he would say, just separate from him. That was all that's available at that time. No counselors, no laws to protect the domestic abuse violent victims. And I would see that woman cry, and she would come many, many times to our house, and I'll never forget that. So I ended up working with abused women also later in my life. So that was the call in my life, the upbringing, the orientation. And then my family members, we would always have people come to our house, and we would share our food, our clothes, we'll open our closets, and we're like a social welfare, because that's the culture. You always share your food, your rice, your clothes. That's the upbringing, that's the culture. So it supported what already was in my heart, based on the call of the God that I believed in, the Bible that I read, and that the God that my Bible says has compassion for the poor, that He will never forsake us or nor leave us, that who would be the God who would come on behalf of the destitute, those who are the people who are wronged, and hungry. So, and then the third is that I would say I obeyed because it is very hard for me to do this work. I have not known poverty, and to work with the very poor, you also have to be poor and understand poverty, and to relate and to identify, and that's very hard for me because I have a family that always fed me, supported me. My father treated me with dignity, honor, with all the love, and now I work with women who are being abused by men. That's hard to reconcile, and yet push factor for me was to be able to say, I'm grateful for my life. Now I can offer my life. I think the love and care and strong family structure provided a cushion that now I can withstand the harshness of the field. It's very harsh to work out there.
Oh,
The
of course.
persecution, the poverty that you have to share into the poverty, or live through in that poverty as well. The the difficulty of coming against the walls, the social walls or structures of the society, when you come against such terrible issues of violation of human rights, the and the persecution in a third world country like ours, where we are, I believe, the world's 11th most corrupt nation, or is it in the world or Asia? Oh, I guess we're in the world 11th most corrupt nation. It used to be. And if you can imagine the tremendous violation of human rights in a country like ours. So so those factors work together uh, to bring me into the issue. And when I was working my thesis for my 10 years ago, I had to focus on the topic that was closest to my heart. And I like challenge, so whatever is most difficult, that's what I choose. And to me, the most difficult to me was the issue of women needing to sell their bodies against their will to be able to put food on the table. And so I chose the issue of prostitution. About the caregiving, they said that the Filipino women have changed the landscape of healthcare or caregiving all over the world. They're deployed as domestic help and caregivers in at least 103 countries around the world. And most of our majority of our domestic help in Hong Kong are school teachers. So we have lost our teachers to become domestic help, and we have also they have also left families and children, and the social cost is high. It's unimaginable. And I've spoken with a few caregivers here lately in New York. It's a tough job. They and maybe those people who do the night shift, that's their third job. I said, when do you sleep? We don't. I don't know how they survive. And it's a very, I've seen the desperation um, of people more than direct abuse from employers. Maybe they permit the abuse to themselves by overworking and by taking in jobs that are um, that are less paid just because of desperation or wanting more to be able to send home to family. It's very sad. They come from dysfunctional families, and there's the issue of poverty, and then most of them would quit school. Again, the primary education here, which was the topic, of the last CSW. When she quits school at 8, she stays home, babysits, does the difficult housework at 8. I remember when I was 8, I was just playing and eating and going to school doing nothing much. But now she has to babysit siblings and cook maybe. Now, the abuse, the physical abuse or incest happens now within the household because maybe the mother is out working, the father is gone, and there's the uncle, the grandfather, the brother who would, rape um, kids that are left, in the house by themselves during the day. About babies being raped. Yes. So, and then the youngest prostitute, or at least we call them the youngest prostitute in the Philippines, before was 4 years old or even less. Those children selling flowers on the streets of Manila, and we still have those. And the incest, you never can tell. It's as early as it can be possible, as infant. But um, I, I have a very limited research, so I just knew it was like between the ages of 5 and 10, and then because of poverty and family issues, they would run away from home. That's really a part of the pattern that I traced. So quitting school, difficult family situations, incest brings you to get out of the on the streets, and then when they get out on the streets, they either become domestic help, and they suffer more abuses, and they get tired of that, and then they meet somebody on the street, a trafficker, a pimp, and then that's the beginning of prostitution. 11, 12. It's interesting because there are different types of prostitution in Asia, like young girls, fresh, and then there are the older women, middle age to older.
Sort of 40 plus?
Yes, they still do prostitution, mostly entertaining customers. Some other customers, because many customers would also want something beyond sex, like more of friendship. Most of these customers would have their wives working as domestic help and caregivers in other countries. So the men who are left behind at home, this is really tragic, would spend their time in the nightclub or in the prostitution places because they have physical needs, they have emotional needs, and some customers would say that the prostituted women meet their needs because they miss their wives. So that's the tragedy there, and then they also spend the hard-earned money.
That came from the wife.
Yes, because most of the husbands who are there in the Philippines who are left with the children don't have jobs. That's why the woman has to leave because she's more marketable as a caregiver. So she leaves her husband to babysit the children, and then the husband feels insecure, and then she's gonna go to the beer houses and get connected with the prostituted women and have children with it's kind of a really complex structure here. We have so many Filipino women who have become acquainted with the U.S. Navy. So many have born children and been abandoned. There are a few Filipinas who were able to migrate here. The U.S. Navy men married them, and most of them are in San Diego, California. The Philippines, the traffickers could be regular people who have gone into the prostitution business, and they have their nightclubs, the videoke bars, dating services. I'm sorry to say it could be government officials who actually own the businesses, like local officials, local city officials. I know some nightclubs in our city owned by the mayor, or their cohorts, or and they also provide a business because when a place is highly political, there's a lot of prostitution because the people helping the government, the officials, let's say the supporters, all they do, well, their leisure is to go to clubs. The women are a gift to these people who help the politicians. That in the case of the Philippines, we receive a warning from the World Health Organization and also the World Bank that if we don't do something about our issue of HIV testing, we might just wake up one day with AIDS full blown. Even among prostituted women, we have what we call smear test. Actually, that works well for our program because we are able to connect with the women through the health department because they line up every day. They are required a smear test once a week. So they come to our health center and they're there. So we are able to really invite them to our office or to our classes, build friendship with them. Yes. It's an entry point, it's an open door for us. And it's called the HIV program, but all they do is smear test. And I believe in that particular city, they do a once a year HIV testing. It's a very, very expensive process or test. We do, according to the report in that city where I work, we have a very low rate of HIV.
Good.
That's good news, but I sometimes I doubt the accuracy. But I am not in that area and I have no valid reason to doubt, but it's just that I feel is it I just have doubt about the accuracy. Period, you know. But it's being done. But for older, but it's only been done in the past decades. So the much older prostituted women, I don't think, no, no, they never. So we're still, our government still not allowing or allocating funds for the HIV.